Welcome back to Inside Olympia. This week we are talking with freshman lawmakers about what brought them to the legislature and their impressions thus far. Joining me now are two first-term Republicans, Deb Manjarrez and Hunter Abell, both state representatives. Good to see you both. Thanks for being here. Interesting contrast, I'll note right away, because we just had two West Side Democrats from different districts, but you're both from, and we joked about what East Side means. Is that the east side of Seattle, or is that the east side? So you're from the east side of the state. Let's start with your districts, and then we'll find out more about you. But I think it's nice to kind of place people. So do you want to start off, Representative Abell? Like your district always interests me because it's so large.
Yeah, it's a huge district. First of all, thank you for letting us be here. Yeah. It's the 7th district, which is all of Northeast Washington and most of North Central Washington. It's fully 20% of the landmass of the state of Washington, and it's larger than 9 U.S. states. So huge district, all are part of 7 counties.
And why don't you just, for fun, tell us how many hours it takes you to get from home to Olympia?
Well, it's exaggerated a little bit because there's no way to get there pretty much close to as the crow would fly. I take a ferry boat across the Columbia River, so it depends on catching the ferry. So typically about 7 hours to get from home to Olympia.
And just last question, are you carpooling with your colleagues from the 7th? I know that's been historically that's happened.
We carpool a fair bit, not for purposes of coming over to session, so frequently because we're going back and forth and need to have a little bit of flexibility on our own, but we do carpool quite a bit.
Around the district?
Right.
Okay, good. Representative Manjarrez, same question. Let's place you in the state.
Yes.
The Yakima Valley.
Yes, thank you for having me. So yes, Yakima Valley. I'm from Wapato, right in the middle of the Yakima Valley, right on the Indian Reservation. I've lived there my whole life. The 14th, though, goes from Klickitat. We grab not Goldendale, but like Lyle and Centerville up there, and then we come and grab all the Yakima Indian Reservation. A little bit east, Yakima, Union Gap, Wapato, Toppenish, Grandview, Sunnyside, and then comes and grabs a little bit of east Pasco. It's probably 4 hours from one end to the other of that new 14th district.
And it is a new district, newly drawn. More newly drawn district.
That's correct.
Okay. What do you do when you're not legislating?
What I do in my other career, I'm a certified public accountant, and I have been for 40 years. I have my own firm. My adult daughter is my partner, which is lovely. I get to work with my daughter for the rest of my life. And my husband and I farm. We still grow some apples.
Okay, very good. So a little accounting, a little orcharding.
That's right.
Okay. Same question for you. What do you do when you're not legislating?
Yeah, a number of hats. So I live on a multi-generation family ranch located on the Colville Indian Reservation, and Deb and I have talked about that before.
That's an interesting parallel here.
It is, both privileged to live on reservations and the blessings that involves. Professionally, I'm an attorney. I practice at a regional firm called Williams Kastner, and I've been there, my goodness, about 15 years now, so a while. And then I'm also a reservist in the United States Navy.
Okay. So then let's get to the question of why you wanted to run. And maybe I'll start with you, Representative Abell, because I know that you also have a young family. And so I'm always interested to know about sort of the sacrifice that's involved. And it's more so when you're farther away, and there's more distance to cover. What motivated and prompted this? I know you served as a judge, if I recall, in your home area.
That's right. I had the privilege of serving as the judge for Ferry County District Court. Okay. So the opportunity to do justice in my hometown, my home community. It was a wonderful job.
Yeah, the commute's good?
The commute was good.
Yeah, right.
It was still an hour 15, one way, so it took a while, but I'd go in there and it would be people I went to high school with, people I played football with, that sort of thing. So, and it was neat to help build the trust and confidence in the community and what we were doing there in the court system. So that was a tremendous honor. It was difficult to set that aside and decided to run for this office, but I felt passionately about the issues that are facing our state. I want to make it better, and I think this is the way to do it.
This is the seat that Joel Kretz held?
That's correct, yeah. So my predecessor was Joel Kretz.
And leader in the Republican
caucus.
Yeah,
wonderful leader for the caucus, the cowboy from Wakanda. There's no replacing him for sure. And these are big shoes, and I take it seriously. But, what really motivated me for running for this position was I have a family tradition of military service and public service, and I wanted to follow that. And then you mentioned I've got two beautiful little girls. In fact, not so little. My oldest sang the national anthem here at the Capitol when we convened a couple
fun.
of weeks ago. So
Oh,
that
that's
was neat.
great.
So they are huge motivators for me.
Yeah. What is just I'll ask you about kind of that sacrifice of being here during session with as a family, with a family. How do you manage that?
It does involve a sacrifice. I am very blessed. I've got friends and family who have been willing to drive the kids back and forth. I do a tremendous amount of driving to go see the kids. If I can't do my job as a dad, I can't do my job here in Olympia as a legislator. So that's the deal I've got.
Right.
And so I've got a lot of people on the team helping make it happen.
Okay. Representative Manjarrez, same question about kind of what motivated you to run, to sacrifice coming over to Olympia. Sounds like you're pretty busy as is.
I am. And the hardest part of this job is actually being away from my family. That's the one. It's not the work. I enjoy the work, but it's being away from my family, and I'm only 3 hours away. But I was always involved. I came from Wapato, a small little town, involved in the Chamber of Commerce there for like 10 or 12 years, always promoting my little city, and helped start the Tamale Festival, which was just a little community, another community festival sort of thing to help bring more people to Wapato. So I was always involved in the community, and I was actually recruited to fill this spot because I am busy during that time. But no, I didn't like the way.
Well, yeah, and I didn't even really think about that. This is tax season.
This is tax season.
So how are you?
Because they did wonderful last year during the long session. My team did wonderful. I have about 5 people there, and they handled it without me just fine. So they probably liked it better because I'm kind of walk into the room and go, I need this now. I didn't like the way the state. I hadn't liked the way the state was headed in its leadership for a very long time, and we needed some common sense. So that was really my motivating factor.
Well, that's a nice entree to sort of the next kind of question is, you're Republicans in a state legislature that is controlled by Democrats, not quite 2/3 majorities, but very large majorities. So when you're thinking about, and I've asked legislators this question, right direction, wrong direction. Sounds like you'd answer, we're heading in the wrong direction. So as a Republican in the minority, where do you think you can make a difference? How do you think you can, if you've come here to make some change, how do you do that when you're not part of the majority?
No, you do. You do it steps at a time. You do it steps at a time. We've got such big jobs in front of us. This drug crisis, which turns into the homeless crisis. We've done a lot of work, but we have to change. We have to look at every program we ever put out there, and we have to look at it. Is it doing what it's intended to do? And that's a big job. We've got to change one thing at a time. The taxation. Our people are just burdened with the cost of living in this state. And there's lots of hidden, the cost of living in this state has been caused by the laws that have come out of this bill, the legislature for the past 30, 40 years. I mean, I'll give you an example. The Growth Management Act, that was a complete takeover of private property rights. That's what it was. And to take all the control away from local cities and counties who know what that land use should be used for. And it was and in the very beginning it said, no, you can't divide that piece of property. No, you can't build a house there, and no, you can't build a house there. And where are we now? We're putting Band-Aids because we don't have enough housing. And had we let the people in the local communities decide those things, I believe we wouldn't be there. The same thing with the Climate Commitment Act. Everything we use in our life is delivered to our store in a truck using gas or diesel. I mean, and so when you think about that, that's added what? It went from 50 to 70 cents, depending on what the auctions are happening, a gallon. That increases the price of everything from tomatoes to toothpaste to our shoes to our clothes. And that's a hidden tax out there, and our people can't see that. I mean, look what it's done to our schools.
So let me go back to just where do you think you can make, because, you're talking about signature policies of the Democrats, the Climate Commitment Act. That was the governor priority. So probably not going to repeal that, but where do you think you can make, and maybe the housing issue is the best one to go back to, because I haven't heard talk of sort of opening up the Growth Management Act again, although some people have talked about that, but there is clearly interest in looking at some of our zoning laws and
Right.
figuring out, how can we increase supply. So where do you think you might be able to?
So in my district, we need more homes for that first home buyer. Okay, maybe 1,500 to 1,700 square foot homes. We do. We actually have a bill I'm co-sponsor on with another representative from the 7th, talking about allowing truly the local government, city and counties, to make some changes. Don't have to accept what the state building codes are, the energy codes. Allow them to make those choices and bring the cost of those houses down.
So it's sort of an exemption or some flexibility from the state standards.
That's right.
Okay.
So little steps.
Mm-hmm. Representative Abell, same question. Kind of issues that are animating you or your district, specific bill or two that you think is reflective of that?
Yeah, well, a number of issues certainly animating me and my district. Some big ones, of course, the state of the state, how we're doing, how our economy is, the affordability issues we have in our state. Real concern about the tax burden in our state. It took about 130 years for us to get to a budget of around $35 billion and then another 10 to double that. So we have really dramatically increased the size and the scope of state budget in the last 10 years, and people are, I think, rightly asking, are they seeing the return on the investments in things like education, public safety, transportation? And I think they are seeing that they're not seeing an appropriate return on that investment. So this goes to kind of the question you were asking before, is there a better way to do this? And I think there is. And I think that's part of the job of the minority, is to speak constructively but forthrightly that there is a better way to do things than how the majority is running it currently. And that's certainly something I'm trying to do. Where can I make a particular difference? So my background is the military, of course, and I think there is broad bipartisan interest in supporting our veteran community. I've got a couple of bills on that subject. One reorganizes the Veterans Affairs Advisory Committee, and I'm happy to say that passed unanimously off the House last week and is over in the Senate. And I'm hoping to get that to the governor's desk. I've also got a bill that I'm very passionate about, as is the veterans community. This is House Bill 2514 that would establish a permanent memorial here on the Capitol campus for the roughly 150 to just shy of 300 Washingtonians who lost their lives in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So this would be a memorial that joins the war memorials to those lost in World Wars I and II in Korea and Vietnam.
War, yeah.
So
right.
Tremendous support for that. In fact, it may be the bill with the most bipartisan co-sponsors this session.
Oh, wow.
I've not seen one with more.
Okay.
And I've been asking the clerk, and so
Right.
far you can't prove me wrong. So I'm just going to say it. It's the most
Yeah.
bipartisan bill in the session right now.
What are some other ways? I was, talking with your counterparts, the Democrats, who were talking about, options that they've seen, opportunities they've seen to work with Republicans, co-sponsor bills and whatnot. They don't have to do that. They don't need your votes. But they were indicating that that was important to them, where they can find that opportunity. You do need Democratic support to get bills across the aisle, and I'm just curious about, especially because we live in such polarized and partisan times, given sort of this deep-seated belief that Democrats, from your perspective, have made some bad choices, and yet you come into this environment and it can be pretty collegial, and you can find some commonalities and some friendships across the aisle, and you need their votes. So how does that start to manifest? Have you found some Democrats you think you can work with, that you can respect, even if you don't always agree with their policies?
Yes, I have. In fact, I have two bills this year that I believe will get across the finish line that has bipartisan support. So yes, more in your second year. The first year you're just figuring out how it works and how to get it from point A to point B. But no, there's several that I've worked with across the aisle this year, and it was quite enjoyable. I mean, it comes down to the bill itself and what it's going to do, and so I think that's the key.
Can you give us an example of a bill or two here?
Yes, so there's two. One's a labor and industry bill, which labor and industry inspects all off-site manufactured housing, which could be RVs, campers, and of course the manufactured housing. So we were sending inspectors all over the country and the world to inspect those in person. This bill is going to allow us to use third-party inspectors. Hopefully they're already in those plants to bring, and so that should bring down the price of those units as they come into our consumers.
So just to be clear, these might be manufactured overseas, and we were sending you local inspectors to look at the as they're being
That's
built.
right.
Do they
You got to
meet
watch.
standard?
That's right. Well,
So
they're
you're-
open.
And that raises the cost of the final product.
You're right, because we were charging obviously the costs of those
So
inspections.
you're interested in third-party inspectors who could do that work on the ground. Okay.
And that's had some support. So no, that's probably going to get across the finish line.
Same question. I mean, you're from such, I mean, both of you are from such red portions of the state. And there is such difference, I mean, philosophically, right? The differences run deep between a Seattle Democrat and a Northeast Washington Republican, I would think. But what have you observed about the ability to, or the opportunities to work across the aisle and maybe even make a friend across the aisle?
Yeah, I think there are real opportunities there, and I think, I think both of us have worked hard on that this last year. To me, it seems that there are a couple of key ingredients to being successful there. One is to be genuine. I don't think we would succeed if we came here and were something different than who we are or who we ran as. I think that's really important. I'm a conservative. I'm proud of that. Two is to be constructive and professional. I think we as public servants have an obligation to model appropriate behavior, and I think people really want that in 2026. So we can engage in hard debates, hard discussions, tell truth to power, truth to the majority, but do so as a happy warrior, so to speak, and do it in a way that hopefully convinces people that there may be other ways to go here. I think another important thing is to try and enrich the debate, ennoble the conversation. And then lastly, I think it's really important that we say something new rather than just kind of continually saying the same talking points past each other. If you're able to do those things, I think there's a pretty good reservoir of folks on the other side who are anxious to engage in those conversations.
Is there anything that has surprised either of you or both of you about Olympia, about the way it works, about the rules of how you navigate this place? Do you have funny moments as you were trying to learn, the process of passing Abell, or just your way around the Capitol? Give us some inside stories about what it's been like to be new, because you're only new once.
Well, I'll jump in. I was astonished at, frankly, how beautiful our Capitol campus is. I paged as a high school student. I know one of your previous guests did as well. Yeah. So that was a neat opportunity to come see just how beautiful our Capitol campus is. I think it's most beautiful in the country. But it had been many years since I've been back. And so I did come back. I brought my children. As you might recall, there's some kind of angled marble along the steps there. And so the moment they had the opportunity, they slid down it, as thousands of children have before them.
Right.
But it's a lovely building. It's filled with people who are trying to do the right things for their districts and for the state. And it's a place where we come to have big, significant debates about important public policy here in Washington. Honored to be here.
Okay. Do you have a story or an observation about just, what was maybe different than you thought it would be?
Oh, lots of things are different than I thought it would be. But, we have fun. We have fun on the floor, and we have fun in caucus. We're all, if you can imagine, 98 type A personalities coming together. So those are the fun times. And in committee, we have fun, and, you get gavelled because you didn't move the motion before you started talking the motion and that sort of thing. But, the second year's definitely been more fun than the first.
What about communicating back to your district and sort of connecting the connective thread? It would seem that the farther you get from Olympia, the harder that might be. Or, the impression is, it's Olympia. Maybe they're not happy with the decisions that are being made. Now you've gone to Olympia. Are you part of the problem or part of the solution? How do you, I know you can send newsletters and you can have town halls and that kind of thing. But what are you finding as a way to try to bridge that distance?
Well, I'll jump in. So my district is huge and a long ways away. Yeah. And so for me, it seems that the most effective ways to communicate during session are we do send email updates. We engage in radio programs. My district listens to a lot of radio. And I hear from folks during the interim, I heard you on the radio.
They're driving around.
They are. So
radio, yeah.
Good old-fashioned ways to communicate like that are wonderful. I do a lot of Facebook and social media. We've got a telephone town hall coming up here in a couple of weeks, which a lot of people historically attend. So that is good news. But people in the 7th District pretty regularly understand that when the legislators like Joel Kretz, my predecessor, would go to Olympia, it's kind of like they're on deployment. Again, that military background. You're on deployment for a while, and you'll be back when it's done. And so they'll expect to hear all the results when you're done with session. But in the meantime, telephone, social media, those are pretty much, and email are the best ways for me to stay in contact.
So be interim when you get back there. Just you gotta meet. You gotta go to all the different links of in your community, your hospitals, your schools, all of that, and just talk with them. That's right. Just talk with them. You talk about how it works, and Yeah, I love the interim, meeting with all the people from my constituents.
Is there a particular issue, you've talked about some of the bills that you're each working on, but is there a particular issue in your communities that you've had to educate the folks here about? Again, because of the unique nature of, more rural, east of the mountains, that kind of thing. I think Representative Abell has a good answer for me.
How much time do you have? Yeah. My district is very unlike the vast majority of the districts here in Washington. It's inland. It's huge. It's primarily agricultural.
It does have a ferry, though.
It's got a couple of ferries. A couple of ferries along that ply the Columbia River, yeah. It's an amazing district, largely agricultural, lots of farms, lots of ranches, not a lot of, towns of any size. Bordered by the north by Canada down to East Wenatchee, east to Idaho, and then west clear to the crest of the Cascades. So really massive. And so what that means is that a lot of times policy that's designed for urban or suburban Puget Sound districts is a one-size-fits-all approach that just doesn't work in the 7th District. So growth management is a great example where it just frankly doesn't work for much of the 7th District. A lot of our policies regarding agriculture, unfortunately, are having difficult, harmful impacts in the 7th District. And so that is a real challenge. What I do find is if I go to members of the majority and I say, let me educate you about my district, often they are very receptive. That doesn't always translate into an altered end legislative product, but it's part of my job as a member of the minority to keep trying and keep advocating for my district.
And I've got to believe that if you're succeeding Joel Kretz, you've probably picked up the baton of talking about wolves.
Yeah, and wolves, yes. Lest we forget about wolves. Yeah.
As you say, we could talk for many hours about that. Anything in particular that is sort of an issue central to your district? I mean, you have a large district too. It's going to be diverse in terms of needs, but something that you've sort of brought to folks here and said, look, the area I represent, it's different, and here's how and here's why.
It's a heavy agricultural area, so I mean we have some tug of wars between labor and agriculture.
And there's bills always around farm worker rights and
That's
sort
right.
of
Those are becoming difficult because the ag prices and what's happening is the farmers are not making ends meet too. So yeah, but the thing I think back for the people in district is that they believe we have a little bit more power than we do. Okay, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? We have to work together, and we work, within the whole process of how from a bill starting to the committee and all of those things. And not being in the majority, we have to work a little bit harder. So.
The Democrats gave examples of issues or situations where maybe they broke a little bit with their own caucus or their own party. Can you? I mean, I realize yours is a smaller caucus, but can you think of a situation where, where you can sort of surface the diversity of thought within the Republican caucus? And if you don't have an answer, I understand, but I'm always curious about, you're not all a monolith.
Well, I'll jump in here. So you mentioned part of my background is serving as a district court judge. I view part of my role in this position as a legislator as to be an advocate for our judiciary and to try and help our judiciary work better. And sometimes we have big disagreements with the decisions that come out of the Temple of Justice or the Court of Appeals. And if we don't like, the interpretation of the law, we can try and write a new law. That's certainly something we can do. But, sometimes I fear that there is a bit of an anti-judicial rhetoric that you get from some quarters, not necessarily from our caucus, but I think you can hear it at a national level. And I am trying to be a voice saying, look, we need the rule of law. The judiciary is incredibly important. It's where we go in front of an impartial decision maker to get justice. I think the county courthouse is one of the most important buildings we've got in a county. And it's something that makes people want to live here in this country. And so we need to build up and support our judiciary, hold them to account when they get it wrong. But that's part of the voice that I'm trying to have here.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with most of our caucus. Like I said, conservative values. We need to have so I can't give you an specific example of breaking with the caucus on one of those things.
That's fine.
I just want all of our people in our districts to be able to own their own home and succeed in the American dream if that's what they want.
Okay. Just a couple minutes left, and I'll kind of give you each a last word about, serving in 2026, difficult times. I said to the the prior panel, all politics is national now. What is it like to be an elected legislator in 2026? And what keeps you coming back thinking, I'm going to do this?
Well, I think I'm trying to be part of the antidote to the problem that all politics is national. National politics is certainly important, but I ran to serve as a state legislator. I'm passionate about my district. I'm passionate about this state. I'm very concerned about the path that we seem to be on. I think there's a better way for us to do things here in Olympia. And if we do the things that we talked about before, that incredible importance of being genuine, being factually accurate when talking with folks. If you don't know the answer, say, I don't know the answer, but let me do some homework and get back to you. Try and make the conversation better and, advance the conversation in some way. I think that is very helpful in changing the tone of the conversation. I remember when I ran in my campaign, I would talk to rooms full of Republican, Party activists. I would say, folks, we have to change how we think and talk about the other side. And heads would just go up and down. People would nod in agreement. And, and so I think there's a deep desire, frankly, on both sides of the aisle for us to change about how we talk and interact with folks who may not agree with us.
Okay. I'll give you the last word, just a few seconds.
Sure. No, you're right. But you're right. From the media standpoint, politics is national, but really the more effect on your life can happen right here at the state or even at the county level. It's real important, and we need to remind our folks about that sometimes, that what's
so
happening right here.
Maybe all politics is national, but a lot of policy is local.
That's right.
Or state.
That affect their lives.
Representatives Manjarrez and Abell, thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate the conversation. Good luck for the rest of the session, and hope to have you back on. Thank you for watching Inside Olympia. We'll see you again next week.